The war had ended, but the air across the stars still carried the scent of ashes. The Velra Empire, once one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, had fallen. Its fleet burned, its banners torn apart, and its proud people scattered like dust in the void. And at the center of this ruin stood one name whispered in both fear and sorrow: Queen Sarathra Velra. Once her command voice could make entire armadas kneel. Her beauty and strength had made her seem untouchable, but now she sat in chains inside a cold metal cell, her golden armor gone, her crown taken, her wings of honor clipped by defeat. The Galactic Council had gathered in the Grand Chamber to decide her fate. Representatives from dozens of species filled the hall, some watching with hate, others with cruel amusement. The humans, being newcomers to the galaxy, stood quietly in the corner, ignored by most. The council leader, a tall insectoid being named Drellin Voss, spoke with a sharp, buzzing voice. Sarathra Velra, Queen of the Fallen Empire, guilty of leading wars that cost countless lives. You are stripped of title and authority. From this day you are no longer a queen but property of the council. Sarathra lifted her head, her once glowing eyes dimmed but still proud. I would rather die than serve you, she said coldly. The hall burst into mocking laughter. Drellin's mandibles clicked in amusement. Oh, you will serve, former queen, but not us directly. You see, the council believes in symbolic justice. The chamber doors opened and a lone human walked in. He was not a soldier, nor a noble. His clothes were simple, worn from years of work. His hair was untidy, his hands rough from labor. His name was Elias Ward, a repair engineer working on the frontier colonies. The council had called him there for reasons unknown to him. As he stepped into the light, the alien crowd chuckled quietly. They had chosen him on purpose, one of the youngest species in the stars from a world still recovering from its first space wars. Humans were seen as simple, emotional creatures, too kind, too fragile to rule or fight properly. Drellin smiled cruelly. Human, you have been selected to receive a gift from the council, a reward for your species' loyalty and cooperation. Elias frowned slightly. A gift? The council guards dragged Sarathra forward. Her wrists were bound, her royal robes torn. The sight made many in the chamber grin wickedly. Yes, Drellin said, a queen, once feared by all. Now yours to command as you please. Perhaps she can clean your machines or polish your ship. A fitting end for a proud ruler. The aliens laughed. Some pounded their claws together. The noise echoed through the hall like thunder. Elias didn't join in. He looked at the woman before him, not as a defeated enemy, but as someone who had lost everything. Her face showed pain, exhaustion, and defiance. She was trembling slightly, though she tried to hide it. Elias took a slow breath and said quietly, "What if I don't want her?" The hall went silent for a moment. Drellin tilted his head, confused. "What did you say, human?" Elias repeated calmly, "What if I don't want a person to be given like property?" The council chamber erupted in low murmurs. No one had ever questioned the council's decision before, especially not a human. Drellin gave a cold smile. "Refuse and we will execute her instead. Her death will be on your conscience." Elias looked at Sarathra. She stared back at him with burning eyes, half expecting him to laugh like the rest, but he didn't. Instead, he simply nodded. "Fine," he said softly. "I'll take her." But not as property. The guard shoved Sarathra toward him. Her balance broke and she fell to her knees in front of the human. Elias reached down and helped her up gently. The aliens laughed again, but this time their laughter felt uneasy. As they left the hall, Drellin's voice echoed behind them. "Enjoy your gift, human. Let's see how long your kindness lasts." Outside the chamber, the stars of the galactic core glowed beyond the station's massive windows. Elias walked beside the silent queen, who refused to look at him. Her chains clinked with every step. They reached the docking bay where his small transport ship, the Horizon's Light, waited. It was old, patched with mismatched panels, but clean and cared for. Sarathra finally spoke. "You could have refused. Why didn't you?" Elias glanced at her. "They would have killed you," she scoffed bitterly. "So what? Death would be mercy compared to this shame." Elias shrugged. "Maybe. But I don't believe mercy has to mean death." She turned her head sharply toward him, eyes narrowing. "Do not pretend to understand me, human. You cannot imagine what it feels like to fall from a throne to the ground." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I know what it's like to lose everything and still have to wake up the next day. That quiet answer surprised her. She looked away, unable to respond. Inside the ship, Elias removed her chains without a word. He offered her a blanket and a cup of warm water. She hesitated but accepted both, watching him closely as he began checking the ship's systems. When she finally spoke again, her tone was cold. You treat me like I am some guest, but I am your prisoner. You could command me, humiliate me, and no one would stop you. Elias didn't look up. Why would I want to do that? Her voice rose. Because that's what they expect. That's what the council wants, to see me broken even more. Elias stopped and looked at her quietly. His eyes were calm, steady, not angry. Then maybe it's time someone did the opposite of what they expect. Her breath caught for a moment. She didn't understand this man. He was not strong like the generals she had known, nor cruel like her enemies. He seemed ordinary, and yet there was something powerful about the way he said simple words as if they carried truth. After a long silence, she whispered, "You're a fool, human." He smiled again. Probably. Later, when Sarathra sat alone in the ship's small cabin, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. The proud queen she once was seemed gone forever. The marks of chains still reddened her wrists. Her eyes looked hollow, yet behind the emptiness there was something else. Confusion. Why had this human shown her kindness? Why had he not mocked her as everyone else did? She remembered his words. No one belongs in chains. For the first time since her capture, she felt something strange, something she couldn't name. It was not pride, not anger. Perhaps hope? In the cockpit, Elias finished setting the ship's course toward a quiet human outpost. He glanced at the cabin door, knowing the woman behind it was more than a prisoner. She was a reminder of how cruel the galaxy could be, and how maybe kindness could be its rebellion. As the ship lifted off, the stars stretched into lines. The council's laughter faded behind them, replaced by the endless silence of space. Elias looked out the window and whispered softly to himself, "They think this is a joke. But maybe it's a chance, for both of us." Inside the cabin, Sarathra closed her eyes. The hum of the human ship felt strangely gentle. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to sleep, not as a queen, not as a prisoner, but as someone who might still have a future. When Queen Sarathra woke, the ship was quiet. The hum of its old engines filled the air like a calm heartbeat. She sat up slowly on the small bunk where she had slept and looked around. The cabin was simple: metal walls, a small window showing the endless stars, and a folded blanket beside her. For a moment, she forgot she was a prisoner. Then the memories returned: the council's laughter, her chains, and the strange human who had accepted her not as a prize, but as a person. She frowned, confused. No one had treated her like that since before the war. The door opened with a soft hiss and Elias Ward stepped in. He wore the same worn jacket and had a small tray in his hands. "Morning," he said gently. "Brought you some breakfast." "Human food. Not great, but it'll keep you alive." He placed the tray on the small table: bread, a warm drink, and a few protein cubes. Sarathra's pride told her to refuse, but her body betrayed her. Hunger won the argument. She picked up the bread slowly, sniffed it, then took a careful bite. It tasted plain but warm. Elias smiled faintly when he saw her eat. "That's good. I wasn't sure if you'd like it." She swallowed and spoke softly. "You show kindness too easily. That can be dangerous," he shrugged. "Kindness is the only thing that's ever fixed anything I've seen broken." Her eyes narrowed. "In my world, kindness was weakness." "Then maybe that's why your world fell," Elias said quietly. Sarathra froze. It was a simple sentence, but it cut deep. She expected mockery or pride from him, but his tone wasn't cruel. It was honest, even gentle. Instead of replying, she stood and turned toward the small window. Stars drifted by, silent and endless. For the next few days, they traveled through quiet sectors of space. Elias worked in his workshop, repairing machines and tuning the ship's engines. Sarathra watched him often, trying to understand him. He was unlike anyone she had known. Most humans she had seen during her rule were soldiers or diplomats, proud, eager to prove their species' worth. But Elias was different. He didn't boast. He didn't fight. He just worked, fixing things with calm focus. Once she saw him repairing a broken drone arm. It sparked, nearly burning his hand, but he didn't curse or shout. He simply smiled, adjusted his tool, and tried again. "Why do you do that?" she asked finally. He looked up. "Do what?" "Keep trying. Even when it fails," Elias chuckled. "Because every problem has a way to be fixed. You just have to be patient enough to find it." She stared at him for a long moment, then turned away. "Patience is for those who have time. I once ruled an empire. Time was my enemy." He wiped his hands and said softly, "And what did it cost you?" She didn't answer. The silence between them said enough. Days passed. Slowly, something began to change. Sarathra started helping in small ways. At first, she only observed how Elias worked. Then one morning, he found her standing by the table, sorting mechanical parts into neat rows. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," she replied simply. "But your workshop is chaos." He smiled. "You sound like my old supervisor." As time went on, she began assisting him directly. Her hands, once used for command and war, now held tools. She repaired circuit boards, polished metal panels, and even helped him design a new stabilizer for the ship. When Elias praised her for her skill, she looked away quickly, hiding the faint warmth rising in her chest. It felt strange. For years she had only heard words of fear or hatred. To hear simple gratitude and real and honest felt almost alien. One evening after long hours of work, the two sat near the viewport. Outside, a nebula glowed like a sea of blue fire. Sarathra spoke first. "Why did your people side with the council?" Elias leaned back in his chair. "We didn't have a choice. The council told us if we didn't, we'd lose trade, support, and maybe even our colonies. So we stayed quiet." She nodded slowly. "That sounds familiar. Many of my people stayed quiet too until silence destroyed us." Elias looked at her. "Do you ever regret it?" "The war?" Her hands tightened on her knees. "Every day. But a queen cannot show regret. A queen leads even into ruin," he nodded. "Maybe that's what makes you different from a leader." Leaders command. People follow because they must. But when someone leads with heart, people follow because they want to. She turned to him. "You speak as if you've led armies." He smiled sadly. "No, just teams of engineers who complained about long hours and bad food." For the first time, Sarathra laughed. It was quiet, soft, almost shy. The sound surprised even her. Elias looked at her and grinned. "There it is. Proof you're not made of stone." She rolled her eyes, but her smile lingered. A few days later, a message came from the Galactic Council. It was short, sharp, and filled with mockery. "Report the condition of the gift. We hope she is useful. Or perhaps entertaining." Elias frowned as he read it. Sarathra watched him closely. He looked up at her. "They're checking in on you like you're some kind of pet." "I am used to it," she said quietly. "It amuses them to see me crawl." Elias shook his head. "Then maybe it's time to stop crawling." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He pulled out a small device, the same kind of communicator used by the council. He recorded his voice. "Status report, the gift is not broken. She's alive, strong, and smarter than any of you expected. If this was supposed to be a joke, you're the ones who'll regret it." He sent the message before she could stop him. Sarathra stared at him in disbelief. "You're mad. They'll punish you for that." Elias just smiled. "Maybe. But I'm tired of watching good people get crushed for someone else's amusement." She didn't know what to say. For the first time since her fall, someone had spoken on her behalf. Not out of fear, not out of loyalty, but out of principle. That night, Sarathra couldn't sleep. She stood at the window watching the stars. Her mind swirled with thoughts she had long buried. Pride, pain, and something new, respect. When Elias entered quietly to check the ship's systems, she spoke without turning around. "Why are you doing this for me?" "You gain nothing," he paused. "Maybe that's the point. Doing good doesn't always need a reason." She turned, her eyes soft but unsure. "You risk your life for someone who once ruled through fear." Elias met her gaze. "Maybe you're not that person anymore." For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet hum of the ship filled the air like the beat of a calm heart. As the days went on, Sarathra began to feel something she thought was lost forever: dignity. It didn't come from her old titles or armor, but from simple acts: repairing, learning, being treated like someone who mattered. Once, while helping Elias install a new engine core, she caught her reflection in a polished panel. She didn't see the fallen queen the council mocked. She saw a woman standing again, taller, stronger, When she looked at Elias, she realized he wasn't just helping her survive. He was teaching her what true strength meant, not the strength to rule, not the strength to conquer, but the strength to rebuild. That evening, as the ship floated near a quiet blue planet, Sarathra looked out into space and whispered softly, "I don't understand humans." Elias smiled beside her. "Most humans don't either. We just try to do what feels right." She glanced at him. "Perhaps that's why your kind is dangerous." He raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous?" She nodded slowly. "Because you believe in hope, even when the rest of the galaxy laughs at you." Elias looked out the window, thinking about her words. "Then maybe hope is our weapon." And for the first time, the former queen smiled with genuine warmth. As the stars drifted by, the once proud ruler of a fallen empire and a quiet human engineer sat side by side. Two souls from different worlds, beginning to understand each other. In that silent moment, something unspoken formed between them. Not command or pity, but trust. And in that trust, the first spark of her redemption began to glow. The human ship, Horizon's Light, drifted quietly through deep space. Inside, its two passengers, one human, one alien, worked side by side. It had been nearly a month since Elias Ward took in the fallen queen, Sarathra Velra. The days had changed both of them. What began as silence and suspicion had slowly turned into understanding. Elias worked as usual in the ship's repair bay. Sparks flickered from his tools as he welded a cracked hull plate. Across the room, Sarathra sorted energy cells and checked the power regulators. She had learned quickly, mastering the machines with a kind of grace that impressed even Elias. "You're getting good at that," he said, smiling faintly. Sarathra didn't look up from her work. "Of course. I ruled an empire once. Repairing an engine is far simpler than ruling millions," Elias chuckled. "I don't doubt it, but it suits you working with your hands." She paused and glanced at him. "It feels honest." That word hung between them. Honest. In her empire, nothing had been honest. Only politics, betrayal, and endless pride. For the first time, she felt something different in this small human ship. A kind of peace she had never known. As time passed, they began building something new together. Using parts from abandoned satellites and old alien technology, they started designing a hybrid energy core, one that combined human engineering and Velra technology. Sarathra's sharp mind guided the design. She explained old Velra schematics while Elias built the circuits with his steady hands. Together, they worked for hours each day, the silence between them filled with focus and quiet respect. One afternoon, after many failed tests, the energy core finally lit up with a soft blue glow. Elias grinned widely. "It works." Sarathra's eyes widened slightly, her lips curving into a rare smile. "We did it." Their excitement filled the workshop. It wasn't about victory or power, it was about creation. About proving that something new and good could rise from what was broken. Elias leaned against the table, looking at the humming core. "You know, this could change things. A power system like this, clean, stable, it could help colonies across the frontier." Sarathra nodded slowly. "It could help rebuild lives, not destroy them." Her words carried a quiet weight. Once her inventions were made for war. Now, with the help of one human, her hands were creating life instead of ending it. But the galaxy was not blind. News spread across channels that the fallen queen was no longer under full council control. Whispers began to move through trade routes and communication hubs, rumors of a human sheltering her. When the Galactic Council received those reports, the same laughter that once filled the chamber returned, only sharper, colder. "Send an observer," Draylen Voss ordered. "Let's see what this human is really doing with our little gift." A week later, as Elias and Sarathra were calibrating the ship's sensors, the scanners detected a small incoming vessel. "Council craft," Elias said, frowning. "Not a warship, just a diplomatic courier." Sarathra's eyes hardened. "They come to mock us again." Elias sighed. "Then we'll show them something worth mocking." When the courier docked, 3 alien inspectors entered, thin, silver-skinned beings with sharp eyes and cruel smiles. They looked around the ship with disgust. "This is where the mighty queen of the Velra lives now?" One sneered. "A junk pile with rusted walls. Sarathra stood tall, wearing a simple mechanic's uniform instead of royal robes. "This junk pile flies faster and safer than your council's finest transports." The aliens laughed. "You sound proud again, Fallen Queen. Perhaps the human has filled your head with foolish hope." Elias stepped forward calmly. "Hope isn't foolish," he said. "It's what keeps people moving when everything else stops." The lead inspector smirked. "You humans are all the same, dreamers. Tell us, what do you plan to do with your pet queen? Start a rebellion? Build an empire of scraps?" Elias looked straight at him. "No, I'm just helping someone remember who she really is." The alien laughed, but the sound faltered as he noticed Sarathra's expression. She was not broken anymore. Her posture was straight, her eyes clear, her presence powerful even without a throne. It was then the inspectors realized something had changed. The joke the council had made was beginning to backfire. They left the ship quickly, muttering about proper reports. When they were gone, Elias turned to Sarathra. "You handled that well," she looked at him seriously. "They will not stop here. You've angered them by giving me dignity." He shrugged. "Then they should learn not to underestimate humans." Later, Sarathra sat alone in the cabin, staring at the reflection of the stars in the window. Her thoughts were heavy. She had started to feel something strange, a stirring deep inside her chest. Not pride, not the cold strength she once wore like armor, but something warmer. It was as if the human's quiet belief in her had awakened a fire she thought was gone forever. She remembered how Elias looked when he worked, focused, patient, never cruel. He never raised his voice or demanded obedience. He simply trusted her. It was a strange feeling for someone who had been treated as a tool of humiliation. When Elias entered the room carrying 2 cups of hot tea, she quickly turned away from the window. "You think too much," he said, setting a cup beside her. "It's hard not to," she admitted. "I'm trying to understand you." He laughed softly. "Good luck. Most humans can't even understand themselves." She looked at him. "You risked everything for me. You defied the council. Why?" Elias thought for a moment before answering. "Because you deserved a chance to stand again." "Everyone does, even enemies," she asked quietly. "Especially them," he said. She stared at him for a long time, trying to find the flaw in his reasoning, but there was none. It was simple. It was human. The next morning, they tested the new energy core again. This time, the output was stronger than before. The ship's systems hummed smoothly, and for the first time in years, Horizon's light felt like a real home. Sarathra stood beside Elias, watching the readouts. "This will change everything. You realize that, don't you?" He nodded. "That's the plan. Change is what makes life worth living." She smiled slightly. "You sound like a philosopher, not an engineer." "Maybe both," he said with a grin. But peace never lasted long in the galaxy. 2 days later, Elias received a coded message through the ship's comms. It wasn't from the council. It was from a hidden source, carrying the symbol of the Velra, Reclaimers, a group of Sarathra's surviving followers. They had seen the council's humiliation, broadcast, and could not believe their queen still lived. The message was brief. "Your Majesty, if you live, know that we have not forgotten. We wait for your return." Sarathra stared at the message for a long time. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the screen. "My people, some of them still remember me." Elias watched her quietly. "Then they need you." She turned to him. "No, they need hope. The kind you taught me." He smiled softly. "Then give it to them." That night, Sarathra stood on the ship's observation deck, her gaze locked on the stars. Once those stars had been her kingdom. Now they were a reminder of what she had lost and what she could still rebuild. She whispered to herself, "I thought my story ended when they put me in chains. But maybe it was only beginning." Elias joined her silently, hands in his pockets. "Stories don't end until we stop trying." She looked at him, her expression calm but strong. "You've changed me, human," he smiled. "No, you just remembered who you are." When the ship's lights dimmed for night mode, Sarathra sat once more by the window, watching the glow of distant worlds. She was no longer the fallen queen mocked by the council. She was Sarathra Velra, the leader who would rise again not through power or fear, but through the lessons she learned from one human who refused to see her as broken. And far across the stars, the first sparks of rebellion began to flicker, followers whispering her name again. The galaxy had forgotten her once, but it would remember her soon. The quiet of space had a way of stretching time. Days and nights blended as Horizon's light moved through starfields. For Sarathra, the stillness allowed her to think clearly, to plan, and to remember. She had not spoken much about the past week, but her mind was active. Every conversation with Elias, every small success in the ship's workshop had changed her. She felt strength returning, an inner strength that had nothing to do with weapons or armies, but with purpose and trust. One morning, as the ship passed, near a cluster of small moons, Sarathra called Elias to the observation deck. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice steady, "about my people. They may not know I'm alive. The Council has erased our history in many systems. If we do nothing, they will remain lost, scattered, hopeless." Elias leaned against the railing beside her. "And you want to fix that?" "Yes," she said simply. "I want to give them hope again, not through fear, not through force, but by showing them that even a fallen queen can rise again, with help." He nodded. "Then we do it together." They began their first task, gathering intelligence about the surviving Velra colonies. Using Elias's discreet human communications network, Sarathra contacted hidden agents, former commanders, messengers, and loyal citizens who had evaded the Council's purge. When the messages arrived, they were cautious but hopeful. "If the Queen lives, we will follow. We wait for the signal. Do not fail us." Sarathra read them aloud in the workshop, her voice steady. Elias watched her carefully. "You're not just planning a reunion," he said quietly. "You're planning a future." Her eyes flickered to his. "And you will be part of it. Do not forget that." He shrugged. "I've never been one for thrones or titles, but I do know loyalty when I see it." Her lips curved into a small, rare smile. "Then we understand each other." As they worked, the Council did not remain unaware. Their sensors detected unusual communications, and whispers of a reborn Velra queen reached their ears. Drellin Voss, furious, ordered a fleet to intercept the human vessel. "They must be taught a lesson," Drellin growled. "No human will dare defy us, and no Velra will rise again." Elias noticed the alerts first while running diagnostics. "They're tracking us," he said, frowning. "A small Council fleet. Not large, but faster than us." Sarathra's jaw tightened. "Then we cannot let them catch us. If they do, the hope we've started to rebuild dies with us." Elias nodded, already working at the console. "I'll plot an escape route. You prepare the crew." Though they had no formal army, Sarathra's leadership began to shine. She worked with a few hidden Velra operatives they had rescued along the way, instructing them in both strategy and morale. Her voice was calm, but commanding, each word carrying the weight of experience without cruelty. Elias watched her, amazed at the transformation. This woman, once mocked as broken, now stood with a quiet authority that no one in the Council had anticipated. "They will not break her again," he murmured. Sarathra glanced at him. "It is not about me. It is about them. The people who still remember who they are." The Council fleet closed in quickly. Sensors blared warnings as their ship dodged through asteroid fields and debris clusters. Sarathra leaned over the controls beside Elias. "Do you trust me?" she asked, voice sharp. Elias glanced at her. "I trust you with my life." She nodded, understanding the weight of that statement. "Then follow my lead." For the next hour, they maneuvered through tight asteroid belts, weaving unpredictably. The Council vessels were forced to slow down, firing cautiously to avoid collisions. Elias handled the engines with precise skill, adjusting thrust and vector without hesitation. Sarathra gave instructions calmly, guiding their path and coordinating small decoys they had set up along the way. It was a dance of trust. The human and the Queen worked seamlessly, neither giving in to fear, neither panicking. By nightfall, they reached a quiet system at the edge of Velra space. Hidden among its moons were the scattered remnants of the Queen's loyal people. Small shuttles began to leave their hiding spots, approaching cautiously. When they saw Sarathra emerged from Horizon's light. Standing tall and unchained, many fell to their knees instinctively. "My queen," one whispered, voice shaking. You live." Sarathra raised her hand not to command but to offer peace. Then she turned and lifted Elias's hand beside her. "This man stands with me," she said, her voice carrying across the small landing area. "Not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as my equal. And together we will rise again." The survivors gasped. Some whispered to one another, astonished that the human beside their queen was treated as an equal, not a subject. Elias smiled quietly. "You have dignity. You earned it back." That night, a small council of the surviving Velra gathered. Sarathra spoke to them with calm authority. "Many of you have suffered," she began. "Many have hidden. The council thought we were finished. But we are not. Not because of my crown, not because of my title, but because hope cannot be destroyed by chains or cruelty." One of her old commanders stepped forward. "But we are weak, my queen. The council is strong. They have ships, weapons, and spies everywhere." Sarathra looked at Elias, then back at her people. "We may be small, but we have what they lack. We have courage, wisdom, and the willingness to rise again. And now we have allies who believe in us, not as rulers, but as equals." A cheer went up, soft at first, then louder. The fallen queen had inspired hope again, not with fear, but with trust. As the celebrations continued, Elias and Sarathra walked together outside the small base. "You know," she said, voice thoughtful, "I thought humans were weak. Frightened. Easily swayed." He raised an eyebrow. "And now? Now I see. You are stronger than most rulers I've known. Not because of power, but because of heart." Elias chuckled. "Heart is underrated in the galaxy." She smiled faintly. "And dangerous when used well." The next day, Sarathra began planning the future of her people. Small, strategic missions were prepared to gather resources, protect colonies, and communicate with other hidden Velra. Elias worked alongside her, his practical mind and human ingenuity complementing her experience. They became a team in every sense. She commanded with wisdom, he executed with skill. Together they created something neither could have done alone, a vision of rebirth. But the council would not give up so easily. Reports of the surviving queen and her human ally were reaching their ears constantly. Drellin Voss, enraged, vowed to strike quickly before they could grow stronger. "We will crush them before they inspire the galaxy," he said. "No queen rises twice. No human will be allowed to teach pride and hope." Sarathra, sensing the growing threat, trained her people for defense. But unlike the wars she had known, these lessons were different. She taught her people to fight, yes, but also to think, to trust, and to protect each other. Elias watched, quietly amazed. "You're not rebuilding an army," he said. "You're rebuilding a civilization." She nodded. "And you, human, are part of that civilization now. Do not forget it." That night, under the twin moons of their hidden planet, Sarathra stood on a cliff overlooking the settlement. She no longer felt the weight of chains. She no longer felt the sting of council ridicule. Beside her, Elias watched the quiet lights of the small colony. He had saved her once, but now he had given her something more, the strength to stand again, not as a subject of fear, but as a leader of hope. The fallen queen had risen, and the galaxy had yet to see the true power of a queen who had learned humility, trust, and courage from a human. The hidden colony stirred quietly under the glow of twin suns. Sarathra Velra stood on the balcony of the central tower, overlooking the small but growing settlement. Her eyes, once full of doubt and despair, now held a steady confidence. Beside her, Elias Ward leaned against the railing, hands tucked into his pockets, watching the activity below. Ships were being repaired, gardens tended, and children ran along the paths laughing without fear. The galaxy had tried to strip Sarathra of everything, her crown, her title, her people, but she had regained something far more important: respect, trust, and hope. And she owed much of it to this human, standing calmly beside her, who had never treated her as broken, It had been months since they had escaped the Council's first fleet. In that time, Sarathra and Elias had built more than just a safe haven. They had begun to rebuild a civilization. Sarathra's people had come to respect Elias, not for his strength or weapons, but for his wisdom, patience, and unwavering belief in the fallen queen. They whispered among themselves, amazed that a human could stand so confidently beside their leader, treating her as an equal rather than a prize. Even Sarathra herself could not deny the change inside her. She had learned humility, compassion, and the quiet courage of patience. She had learned that true strength came not from fear or domination, but from lifting others higher, even when the universe expected her to remain broken. The first warning came in the form of a faint signal. Elias was the first to notice it. "Council ships," he said quietly, scanning the console. "Small fleet approaching quickly. They're not looking for a fight yet. They're looking for a lesson." Sarathra stood silently, closing her eyes for a moment. She could feel the old anger stirring, but she forced it down. "They will not take us by surprise," she said finally. "Prepare the defenses, Elias, but this time we fight differently." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Differently how?" "Not with fear," she replied. "With strength, wisdom, and unity. Show them that hope is stronger than chains." The Council fleet arrived near the planet, scanning the surface for signs of activity. But the hidden colony was ready. Sensors, decoys, and protective energy shields concealed the settlement. Small, fast ships, piloted by loyal Velra, waited silently in orbit. When the Council vessels attempted to target the planet, they found their weapons useless against the human-engineered shields. Elias had upgraded them with energy cores designed in collaboration with Sarathra. Each shield absorbed and redirected energy, turning the enemy's own power against them. The Council vessels faltered, confusion spreading among their crews. They had expected an easy target, a fallen queen hiding with a human. Instead, they faced a force neither they nor the galaxy had predicted. Sarathra stepped forward in the control room, her voice calm but commanding. "Deploy the countermeasures. Let them see that a people united can resist even the most powerful enemies. Show them that a fallen queen is not a weak queen." Elias nodded and began coordinating the fleet. The humans and Velra worked together, their movements synchronized. For the first time in her life, Sarathra saw true cooperation between species, each trusting the other completely. The Council ships were forced to retreat, their attack thwarted by the unexpected strength of unity and innovation. The galaxy had underestimated both Sarathra and the human beside her. When the last Council ship withdrew, a cheer erupted across the colony. Sarathra allowed herself a small smile. She turned to Elias. "We have done it," she said softly. He nodded, a faint grin on his face. "No one will ever mock you again. Not the Council, not anyone." Sarathra looked out at the horizon, feeling the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. She had been given a cruel joke by the galaxy, and she had turned it into a triumph. Not with anger, not with cruelty, but with patience, wisdom, and the guidance of one human who refused to see her as broken. That evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, Sarathra and Elias walked together through the colony. People stopped to nod or bow respectfully, not in fear but in admiration. A young Velra girl approached Sarathra shyly. "Queen Sarathra, will you teach us to lead like you?" Sarathra knelt slightly, smiling at her. "Yes, little one. Leadership is not about power. It is about lifting others higher, helping them become strong. That is how we will survive and thrive." The girl's eyes shone with hope, and Sarathra realized that this was the reward she had truly sought. The ability to inspire her people, to give them confidence and courage. Later, Sarathra found herself alone on the balcony with Elias. The sky was calm, stars twinkling in the darkening blue. She turned to him. "You changed everything," she said quietly. "Not with weapons, not with orders, but with humanity. You showed me that strength is more than power, that even a queen can rise higher when she is helped by someone who believes in her." Elias shrugged, looking out at the stars. "I only did what anyone should do. I didn't want to see someone broken for the amusement of others." Sarathra studied him, her golden eyes softening. "You are remarkable, human. I was given to you as a cruel joke, and yet you lifted me higher than anyone ever could. You gave me hope when it was stolen from me. You made me believe in myself again." He smiled faintly. "Then my job is done." She shook her head. "No, you did not just help me. You helped all of us. You helped my people remember what we are capable of. You helped the galaxy remember that one species, no matter how new, can change the course of history. Elias looked at her, eyes calm. Then we do it together. The rest of the galaxy is still out there. Sarathra's heart swelled. Together. Over the next weeks, Sarathra began sending messages of hope and unity to distant Velra colonies. She used the human network Elias had set up to communicate secretly, and word spread quickly. Survivors began to gather, inspired by tales of the fallen queen who had been saved not by war, but by trust and wisdom. She worked tirelessly, coordinating efforts, repairing what was broken, and preparing her people to defend themselves without succumbing to fear. Each time she spoke to her people, Elias stood by her side, silent, calm, and steady. The combination of human ingenuity and Velra experience created a force stronger than the Council could have imagined. One evening, Sarathra and Elias returned to the balcony after inspecting the colony's defenses. "You know," she said quietly, "I was never sure humans were worth my time. I thought you were fragile, naive, and easily swayed." He laughed softly. "And now?" "Now," she said, turning to him, her eyes bright. "I see that humanity is dangerous, in the best possible way, because you fight not for power or revenge, but for hope. And hope can never be destroyed." Elias smiled. "Then maybe the galaxy should be careful." Sarathra looked at him, a faint blush touching her cheeks. She had learned to trust, to hope, and to respect humans, but more than that, she had come to rely on one human in particular. "Perhaps it should," she said softly. Weeks later, the Velra colonies had begun to reunite under her guidance. Traders and scouts reported to the new queen, not out of fear, but out of respect and loyalty. Stories of her recovery and the human who stood beside her spread throughout the frontier systems. The Council's ridicule had turned into astonishment. They had given her to a human as a cruel joke, expecting her humiliation. Instead, she had risen higher than anyone imagined, stronger, wiser, and more inspiring than ever. Elias stood beside her during a ceremonial gathering, the people cheering, the stars reflecting in their eyes. "You gave me back my people," Sarathra said quietly to him. "You gave me back my dignity." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You earned it, Queen Sarathra. I only reminded you of what was already there." For the first time in years, she felt completely free, not a prisoner, not a fallen queen, but a true leader, and someone who had found an equal in a human who never gave up on her. As the celebration continued beneath the starlit sky, Sarathra looked out at the galaxy she once feared would destroy her. She felt no fear now. She felt hope, unity, and a quiet pride. She turned to Elias, smiling warmly. "Thank you," she said. He simply nodded. "We've done more than survive, Queen Sarathra. We've begun something new. Together. And under the twin suns and endless stars." The fallen queen and the human engineer stood side by side, symbols not of fear, not of cruelty, but of hope, courage, and the power to lift others higher than anyone else could imagine. The galaxy had intended a cruel joke, but in the end, a human had shown it that even a queen could rise, higher than anyone thought possible.